Thanks for tuning in. Today's story dives into one of those classic "is it worth it?" moments we've all either seen, heard about, or maybe even experienced ourselves. Sit back, relax, and get ready as we dive into a tale of trust, temptation, and everything in between. The story begins in a quiet, upscale suburb in Northern California. It's early spring, the days are just beginning to get longer, and everything seems calm and peaceful. At first glance, this neighborhood could be a postcard. Neatly trimmed lawns, classic cars parked along wide streets, and rows of tall oak trees lining each block. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, or at least thinks they do. Our main character, Michael, is a successful architect in his late 30s. He's tall, with an easygoing smile and the kind of energy that lights up any room. He loves his work, the way every line, every design, and every little detail comes together to create something new and lasting. But there's one thing Michael treasures even more than his career: his wife, Emma. Emma's a teacher at the local high school, known for her kind heart and the way she always puts her students first. She's the type of person who remembers birthdays, leaves encouraging notes for friends, and organizes book drives on the weekends. With her soft-spoken charm and genuine warmth, it's easy to see why people are drawn to her. She's the glue that holds Michael's world together, or at least, she used to be. They've been married for 8 years now, and from the outside, they seem like the perfect couple. Friends describe them as solid, and family gatherings are filled with people telling them how lucky they are to have found each other. But beneath the surface, cracks have started to show. Michael has been noticing Emma drifting away, almost as if there's a wall growing between them that he can't quite break down. The first sign that something was off came a few months back. It was subtle at first. Emma working later than usual, texts left unanswered, and the slight look of distraction on her face when they were together. He told himself it was nothing, that everyone has busy spells, that it was just the stress of her new teaching load. But over time, these little changes started to add up. One evening, Michael decides it's time to bring it up. After dinner, while they're cleaning up, he asks, "Hey, Em, is everything all right? You seem different lately." Emma gives him a tired smile, brushing it off with a simple, "Just busy, you know how it is." But something about her answer doesn't sit right with him. It's too vague, too easy. And so, he lets it go, but not without a gnawing feeling in the pit of his stomach. Things come to a head one Friday night. Michael's at a friend's gathering, a small get-together he and Emma were supposed to attend together. At the last minute, though, Emma texted, saying she had to stay late to finish up some grading. Michael shrugged it off at first, thinking nothing of it, until he gets a call. It's from a mutual friend, Sarah, who lives in the same neighborhood. She's hesitant, her voice low, almost like she's trying to talk herself out of saying anything. "Michael," she begins, "I don't want to cause any trouble, but I thought you'd want to know. I saw Emma earlier tonight at the new Italian place downtown, and she wasn't alone." Michael's heart races. He thanks Sarah, trying to keep his voice steady, but inside, his mind is reeling. Emma out with someone else? It doesn't make sense, but a part of him can't ignore it either. He spends the rest of the evening feeling like he's outside himself, caught between wanting to confront her and not wanting to believe it. That night, when he finally sees Emma, he can barely look her in the eye. She's cheerful, almost too cheerful, as she talks about her evening, making up details about her late-night grading session. Michael plays along, nodding at all the right moments, his stomach churning with each word she says. He realizes he's reached a point where he can't ignore the signs anymore. Over the next few days, Michael feels like a detective in his own life. He watches her closely, noticing things he had once brushed off. The way she laughs at texts she doesn't show him, the sudden flurry of new outfits in her closet, the faint scent of a cologne he doesn't recognize lingering in the car. One afternoon, he makes a decision. He goes through her phone. Not something he's proud of, but at this point, he's desperate for answers. As he scrolls through her messages, he finds what he's been dreading: a series of texts from someone named Jake. The messages are flirty, intimate even, with details that only deepen his heartbreak. Jake is someone Emma met through a recent school event, someone who started as just a friend, but clearly became more. The texts are filled with compliments, secret meetup plans, and messages that leave no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Michael is devastated. He spends hours pacing around the house trying to figure out what to do. Should he confront her, pretend he doesn't know, or walk away entirely? Every option feels impossible. Eventually, he decides to confront her, to lay it all out and hope that maybe, just maybe, she'll be honest with him. When she comes home that evening, he's waiting, sitting at the kitchen table with her phone on the table. "Emma, we need to talk," he says, his voice steady, though he feels anything but. She looks at him, her face pale, as if she already knows what's coming. "I know about Jake," he says, barely able to get the words out. Emma's face crumbles, and for a moment, he sees a flash of guilt, of regret. She tries to speak, stumbling over her words, but Michael holds up a hand. "Just tell me why," he says. "Why would you do this to us?" Emma's eyes fill with tears, and for a moment, she's silent. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. "I don't know," she says. I felt like something was missing. And Jake, he filled that space, even if it was just temporary." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. Michael sits in stunned silence, watching the woman he thought he knew unravel before him. Emma's confession hits him hard. She's admitted that she was searching for something she felt was missing, something she found with Jake. But Michael can't wrap his head around it. He's given her everything, hasn't he? The confusion mixes with anger, sadness, and disbelief, forming a tidal wave of emotions he can barely keep in check. Emma goes on, her voice quivering as she tries to explain. She talks about how, over the years, things had just faded. The excitement, the thrill, the spark that once defined their relationship seemed to have quietly disappeared, buried under the weight of daily life. And then she met Jake, who, in her words, made her feel seen again. This moment, raw and real, marks a major shift in their relationship. For Michael, the words cut deep. Hearing that she felt invisible, that she needed someone else to see her, feels like a slap in the face. He stares at her, a mix of frustration and pain etched across his face. But there's more than that. He's searching for answers. Why didn't she tell him? Why didn't she give him a chance to make things right? Emma tries to assure him that she never intended for things to go this far, that it was just a mistake. But Michael isn't convinced. "A mistake," he replies, his voice calm but bitter. "You don't accidentally fall into someone else's arms." The tension between them is thick, and for a moment, the only sounds in the room are their heavy breaths and the ticking of the kitchen clock. They're both at a loss, trapped in the reality of their broken marriage. Michael feels betrayed, of course, but he's also haunted by the realization that maybe he missed the signs, that maybe he wasn't there for her in the ways she needed. Still, he can't shake the anger, the feeling that she could have chosen another path, that she didn't have to seek comfort in someone else's arms. Over the next few days, they barely speak. Michael spends his time trying to work through his emotions, going for long drives and spending late nights at his office, even when there's nothing to do. He wants answers, closure, something to make sense of this mess. But none of it is coming easily. Meanwhile, Emma is struggling too. She hates herself for the hurt she's caused, for the look of pain she saw in Michael's eyes. But at the same time, she can't help but feel a strange sense of relief. Finally, the truth is out. There's no more sneaking around, no more lying, just the raw, painful honesty of their situation. And even though it hurts, part of her feels free. One night, Michael comes home late, exhausted and drained. As he walks into the house, he finds Emma sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for him. She's holding a glass of wine, her face shadowed in the dim light. She looks up as he enters, and for a moment, they just stare at each other. "I think we need to decide what we're doing here," she says softly. Her words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. Michael nods, realizing she's right. They can't keep drifting, pretending this is something they can sweep under the rug. They need to face it, whatever it might be. They talk for hours, pouring out everything they've held back for years. Emma confesses her loneliness, her fear that Michael no longer saw her, and how she felt like they were just going through the motions of being a married couple. Michael, in turn, reveals his own insecurities, his fear that he wasn't enough, and the guilt he's felt over his long hours at work and his own emotional distance. It's an emotionally charged conversation, filled with tears, accusations, and moments of silence where they're both just trying to catch their breath. But it's also cathartic. For the first time in years, they're laying it all out on the table, exposing the vulnerabilities they'd hidden from each other. But even with this outpouring of honesty, the question of what to do next looms over them. Should they try to rebuild what's been broken? Or is it time to walk away, to let go of a relationship that no longer feels whole? In the days that follow, they both try to process everything. Michael spends more time at home, making an effort to be present, to show Emma that he's willing to fight for their marriage. Emma, too, tries to reconnect, joining him for dinners, sitting with him in the evenings, and trying to bridge the gap that's grown between them. But there's still a lingering tension, an unspoken question of whether they can truly move past the betrayal. Trust, once shattered, is hard to rebuild, and even though they're trying, it's clear that the road ahead will be anything but easy. During this time, Michael starts to question his own feelings. Is he staying out of love, or simply because he's afraid of starting over? And what about Emma? Does she truly want to work things out, or is she clinging to the familiarity of their life together? These doubts eat at him, casting a shadow over every step they take toward reconciliation. Then, a turning point arrives in the form of a letter. One afternoon, Michael finds an envelope in the mailbox addressed to him in familiar handwriting. It's from Jake. The sight of it makes his stomach churn, but he feels compelled to read it, to finally understand the perspective of the man who played a role in his heartbreak. In the letter, Jake apologizes, acknowledging the pain he's caused and explaining his side of the story. He admits that he never intended to come between Michael and Emma, but that their connection grew unexpectedly, fueled by Emma's loneliness and his own feelings for her. Jake expresses regret, saying he wishes things had been different, that he hadn't allowed things to go as far as they did. Reading the letter stirs up a mix of emotions in Michael. He feels anger, of course, but also a strange sense of closure. Jake's words remind him that Emma's choices weren't just a betrayal of him. They were a reflection of her own struggles, her own search for something she felt was missing. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it helps him see things from a different perspective. That night, Michael brings the letter to Emma. He shows it to her, and as she reads, he watches her expression change, sees the regret in her eyes. When she finishes, she looks up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Michael," she whispers, her voice filled with remorse. For the first time since the affair came to light, Michael feels a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they can find a way to move forward. But he knows it won't be easy, that the road to healing will be long and challenging. Over the next few weeks, they commit to working on their marriage, attending counseling sessions, and putting in the effort to rebuild the trust that was lost. They face moments of doubt, of anger, of grief, but they also find moments of connection, of love, of a renewed commitment to each other. It's a slow, painful process, filled with setbacks and small victories. But as they work through their issues, they begin to see a glimmer of the relationship they once had. A bond built on love, trust, and understanding. And while they may never fully forget the pain of the past, they're learning to let go, to forgive, and to move forward together. They're rediscovering each other, not as the people they used to be, but as two individuals committed to building a stronger, more honest relationship. If this story has resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more stories like this. Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced something similar or how you think you'd handle a situation like this. Over the next few months, Michael and Emma's journey toward reconciliation is a stormy one. They've committed to rebuilding their marriage, but old wounds and fresh doubts continue to pull them in opposite directions. Every counseling session feels like progress, yet each evening at home is filled with unspoken tension. Michael tries his best to stay positive, reminding himself why he chose to stay and fight for his marriage. But it isn't easy. Emma, on the other hand, is struggling with her own guilt and shame. Despite her sincere efforts to mend things, she feels haunted by the affair, as if her past mistakes are always there, lurking just beneath the surface, threatening to ruin everything again. It's a constant push and pull between them. Progress one moment, then doubt and anger the next. One night, after a particularly intense counseling session, Michael and Emma find themselves in the kitchen, quietly preparing dinner. The air between them is thick with unresolved emotions, each of them lost in their thoughts. Michael suddenly breaks the silence, asking a question that's been gnawing at him for weeks. Emma, if you could go back and undo it all, meeting Jake, everything, would you? Emma's hands pause as she's slicing vegetables, and for a moment, she seems to hold her breath. She meets Michael's gaze, her eyes filled with both sorrow and vulnerability. Yes, I would, she replies softly. But I can't change the past. All I can do is try to make things right now. Michael nods, but the answer only serves to deepen his internal struggle. He wants to believe her, to believe that she's truly sorry and committed to making amends. But trust is fragile, and every moment of doubt feels like a step backward. Just when it seems like they're starting to make progress, a shocking revelation turns everything on its head. One evening, as Michael is going through old emails for work, he stumbles upon a message thread he'd forgotten about. It's from Emma, sent during the early days of their relationship, filled with love and hope for their future together. It's a reminder of who they once were, a stark contrast to who they are now. He scrolls further, looking through the email history, and realizes there are messages missing, gaps in the timeline that don't make sense. His curiosity piqued. He digs deeper, uncovering a hidden folder he'd never noticed before. Inside, he finds a series of emails between Emma and Jake that date back further than he'd originally known. These emails paint a different picture, revealing that her emotional connection to Jake started long before her confession and was more serious than she had let on. Michael feels a wave of betrayal all over again. It's as if he's back at square one, reliving the initial shock of discovering her affair. This time, though, it feels even worse. She hadn't been completely honest with him, even after she promised to tell him everything. That night, Michael confronts Emma, the hurt and anger clear in his voice. He throws the printed emails on the table, demanding an explanation. Emma's face goes pale as she realizes what he's discovered. She tries to defend herself, stammering about how she was afraid he'd leave if he knew the full extent of her relationship with Jake. I was trying to protect us, Michael, she pleads. I thought if I could just show you that I was committed to making things right, maybe we'd have a chance. But Michael isn't buying it. Protect us? Emma, do you realize what you've done? How can I ever trust you again when you keep hiding things? The confrontation escalates, their voices rising as they hurl accusations and confessions back and forth. Emma accuses Michael of emotionally neglecting her, of not being there for her in the ways she needed. Michael fires back, blaming her for breaking their vows, for not giving him a chance to fix things before turning to someone else. The argument reaches a boiling point, and for the first time, they both consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, their marriage can't be saved. The idea terrifies them both, but in that moment, it also feels like the only option left. In the days that follow, they retreat to separate corners of the house, barely speaking except for the essentials. The silence is suffocating, filled with the weight of unspoken words and shattered trust. Michael spends hours at his office, avoiding the emptiness of their home, while Emma throws herself into her work, trying to numb the pain of their crumbling relationship. Despite their growing distance, neither of them can shake the feeling that they're running out of time. They know that if they don't face their problems head-on, they'll lose each other for good. But the path to reconciliation feels steeper than ever, with new obstacles at every turn. In a desperate attempt to break the cycle, they agree to a weekend retreat, just the two of them, away from the distractions and pressures of their daily lives. They hope that maybe, in a different setting, they'll be able to find some clarity, to remember why they fell in love in the first place. The retreat is held at a quiet cabin in the mountains, surrounded by towering trees and a serene lake. It's a stark contrast to their usual environment, and for the first time in months, they feel a sense of calm. They spend their days hiking, talking, and reconnecting in ways they haven't in years. One evening, as they're sitting by the lake, watching the sun set over the water, Emma opens up in a way she hasn't before. She talks about the pain she felt, the loneliness that drove her to seek comfort elsewhere. She admits that she struggled with her own insecurities, her fear of not being enough for him. Michael listens, really listens, for the first time without interrupting or judging. He realizes that he, too, has played a role in the breakdown of their marriage, that his own emotional distance may have contributed to her feelings of isolation. It's a difficult pill to swallow, but he knows that if they're going to move forward, he has to take responsibility for his part. That night, they share an intimate moment, one that feels both familiar and new. It's a reminder of the bond they once shared, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, they can rebuild what's been broken. But their journey is far from over. When they return home, they're faced with the same challenges and doubts that plagued them before. The difference now, though, is that they're committed to facing them together. They make a pact to be honest with each other, no matter how difficult the truth may be, and to put in the effort to heal their relationship, one step at a time. In the months that follow, they navigate the rocky path of rebuilding trust. It's a slow, painful process, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But with each small victory, they grow closer, learning to communicate in ways they never have before. They attend regular counseling sessions, where they confront their past mistakes and work on building a stronger foundation for their future. They learn to forgive not just each other, but also themselves, for the choices they made and the pain they caused. As they work through their issues, they begin to see a glimmer of the life they once dreamed of, a life filled with love, trust, and a renewed sense of purpose. And while they know they'll never forget the pain of the past, they're determined to build a future together, one filled with the lessons they've learned and the strength they've gained. Their story is far from perfect, but it's real, and it's theirs. And as they stand together, hand in hand, they know that they're stronger for having faced their darkest moments together. And remember, if you found this story moving, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more stories that dive deep into the complexities of relationships, trust, and second chances. Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything similar or have advice for those facing challenges in their own relationships. Michael and Emma's journey toward healing has been anything but smooth. Every step forward seems to bring new challenges, as though the universe is testing how much they can bear. Despite their commitment to move forward together, old wounds linger, and both Michael and Emma are haunted by moments of doubt and regret that test their newfound resolve. One night, as Michael is preparing for bed, his phone buzzes with an unexpected notification. It's a message from an old friend, someone he hasn't spoken to in years. The message is simple, but the name attached to it fills him with dread. Jake. Michael's hands tremble as he reads the short, cryptic note. "I need to talk to you. It's about Emma." Confusion and anger surge through him. Why now? What could Jake possibly want after all this time? Against his better judgment, Michael agrees to meet. The next day, he finds himself sitting in a quiet cafe, waiting anxiously. When Jake arrives, there's an awkward tension between them, an unspoken understanding that this meeting is not for pleasantries. Jake doesn't waste time, diving straight into the purpose of their encounter. Jake reveals that he's leaving town and wants to clear the air before he goes. He admits that his relationship with Emma was a mistake, but what comes next leaves Michael in shock. Jake tells him that during their brief affair, Emma confided in him more than Michael realized. According to Jake, Emma had once hinted at deep-rooted doubts about their marriage, doubts that went beyond just her temporary loneliness. Michael feels a surge of anger, but there's something else lurking beneath it, a chilling realization that he may not know Emma as well as he thought. Jake's revelation plants a seed of suspicion, and even as he leaves the cafe, Michael can't shake the feeling that there's more to Emma's unhappiness than she's let on. Later that night, Michael confronts Emma, his voice barely controlled as he recounts the meeting with Jake. Emma's reaction is one of shock and hurt. She can't believe Michael would even entertain Jake's words after everything they've been through. She insists that Jake is lying, trying to manipulate Michael and cast doubt on their marriage for his own reasons. But Michael's trust, already fragile, begins to crumble. For the first time since their reconciliation, he finds himself questioning everything. What if Jake is right? What if Emma has been hiding something deeper? Something that could destroy the life they've worked so hard to rebuild. Their relationship becomes strained once again, with each of them retreating into their own worlds, struggling to find clarity in the midst of chaos. Michael starts to withdraw emotionally, his mind consumed with doubts and questions that he's too afraid to ask. Emma, feeling betrayed and misunderstood, grows increasingly distant, her own feelings of guilt and frustration bubbling beneath the surface. As the days pass, the tension between them grows unbearable. They try to go about their lives, but every shared glance, every awkward silence, feels heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. The foundation of their relationship, already fragile, begins to crack under the pressure. Then, one evening, everything comes to a head. Michael returns home late, exhausted and emotionally drained, only to find Emma waiting for him in the living room. Her face is pale, her eyes red from crying. She looks at him with a mix of desperation and determination, as though she's finally ready to face whatever lies between them. Michael, she begins, her voice trembling. We can't keep going like this. This isn't a marriage. It's torture. Michael feels his heart tighten, but he nods, knowing she's right. They've reached a breaking point, and it's clear that something has to give. They sit down together, and for the first time they lay everything bare. Emma admits that while Jake's words may have held a kernel of truth, he twisted them to suit his narrative. She confesses that she did have moments of doubt, moments where she questioned whether their marriage could survive the weight of their past mistakes. But she insists that those doubts are behind her, that she's committed to moving forward with him. Michael listens, torn between relief and lingering suspicion. He wants to believe her, to believe that they can put all of this behind them. But the scars of betrayal run deep, and he's not sure if he can ever fully let go of the pain she's caused. In a moment of vulnerability, Michael opens up about his own fears, the fear that he wasn't enough, that he failed to see her needs and support her in the ways she deserved. He confesses that he's been holding onto his own resentment, using it as a shield to protect himself from the possibility of future pain. Their conversation stretches long into the night, each of them baring their souls, confronting the ghosts of their past and the insecurities that have haunted their marriage. It's a raw, emotional exchange, filled with tears and moments of silence where they simply hold each other, letting the weight of their words sink in. By the time the sun begins to rise, they're both exhausted, but there's a sense of clarity between them, a fragile understanding that maybe, just maybe, they can start to rebuild from the ashes of their broken trust. They make a pact to let go of the past, to focus on the present and the future they want to create together. In the weeks that follow, they work tirelessly to rebuild the foundation of their marriage. They attend counseling sessions, communicate openly about their needs and insecurities, and make a conscious effort to support each other in ways they never have before. It's a slow, painful process, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But with each passing day, they grow stronger, more resilient. As they navigate the challenges of rebuilding their marriage, Michael and Emma begin to rediscover the love that once brought them together. They find joy in the small moments, the quiet evenings spent cooking dinner together, the laughter shared over inside jokes, and the comfort of knowing that, despite everything, they're still standing side by side. Their journey is far from over, and they know that they'll always carry the scars of their past. But as they move forward, they're filled with a sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, they can create a future that's stronger and more beautiful than the life they left behind. And remember, if you found this story moving, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more stories that dive deep into the complexities of relationships, trust, and second chances. Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything similar or have advice for those facing challenges in their own relationships. As Michael and Emma attempt to leave the past behind and rebuild their life together, their journey takes a surprising and harrowing turn. They're slowly finding a rhythm again, but just as they're starting to feel some semblance of stability, A new development threatens to upend everything they've worked for. One evening, as they're finishing up dinner, Emma's phone buzzes. It's a text message, and Michael catches a glimpse of it over her shoulder. The sender's name causes his stomach to clench. It's Jake. Michael's heart races, a familiar anger and fear bubbling up as Emma opens the message. She stares at the screen, her expression unreadable. And when Michael demands to know what's going on, she looks up at him, her face pale. He's threatening to come forward, she says, her voice barely a whisper. Michael's mind races, trying to make sense of this. What do you mean, come forward? About what? Emma explains that Jake is threatening to tell others about their affair, insisting that it will cause damage to her career and their marriage unless she agrees to meet with him one last time. Apparently, Jake feels he deserves closure, that he needs her to acknowledge what they had one last time, or he'll make sure everyone knows what happened. The tension in the room is palpable as Michael takes in her words. This isn't just an emotional threat. It's a direct attempt to sabotage their lives. He can barely contain his anger, but he's also deeply hurt. You need to be honest with me, Emma. Is there more you haven't told me? Emma, fighting back tears, insists that she's been honest, that there's nothing else he doesn't already know. She swears that her relationship with Jake is completely over, that this is just another twisted attempt on Jake's part to hold on to something that no longer exists. Michael takes a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He knows they're in a delicate place, that the slightest wrong move could shatter what little they've managed to rebuild. But he's also terrified of the damage Jake could do if he follows through on his threat. The stakes have never been higher, and they both know it. After a tense discussion, they decide to confront Jake together, to show him that they're a united front and that his threats won't work. They make plans to meet him at a public place the next day, hoping that the setting will prevent any further escalation. But as they prepare for the meeting, both of them feel the weight of uncertainty. This could be the moment that defines their future, whether they succeed in moving past this, or if it will all come crashing down. The next day, they meet Jake at a crowded cafe downtown. The atmosphere is charged, each of them on edge as they sit across from him, waiting for him to make his move. Jake smirks, clearly relishing the tension, and it's immediately clear that he's not here to play nice. He begins by taunting them, throwing out thinly veiled threats about what he could reveal, how he could ruin their reputations and destroy everything they've built. Michael's jaw tightens, but he keeps his composure, refusing to give Jake the satisfaction of a reaction. Emma, however, is visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she listens to his words. Michael finally speaks up, his voice calm but firm. We're here because we're done with this, Jake. Whatever you think you have over us, it's over. You don't have control over our lives anymore. Jake laughs, clearly unimpressed. Is that so? He sneers, leaning forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I have all the power. I can make one phone call, send one message, and your whole life falls apart. Michael's anger finally boils over. He stands up, his voice rising as he confronts Jake head-on. You're pathetic, Jake. This isn't love, it's obsession. And you know what? We're done letting you hold this over us. Do your worst. The intensity of Michael's words catches Jake off guard, and for a moment, he seems to falter. Emma, inspired by Michael's courage, finds her own voice. She tells Jake, with a newfound strength, that she regrets everything about their relationship, that it was a mistake, and that she's committed to her marriage. I'm done with you, she says, her voice steady. I don't care what you do. Our lives will go on, with or without your threats. Realizing he's lost control, Jake's expression shifts from anger to desperation. He tries one last time to sway Emma, to convince her that they had something special, but she doesn't waver. Her resolve is unshakable, and it's clear that Jake no longer holds any power over her. Defeated, Jake storms out of the cafe, leaving Michael and Emma standing together, their hands clasped tightly as they watch him disappear into the crowd. For the first time, they feel a sense of closure, a finality that allows them to truly move forward. In the aftermath, Michael and Emma return home, exhausted but relieved. They know that the road ahead will still be challenging, that there will be moments of doubt and struggle. But they also know that they're stronger for having faced this final test together. As they sit together on the couch, reflecting on everything they've been through, they realize that they've come out the other side, not just as survivors but as partners. They've faced their darkest fears, their deepest insecurities, and they've emerged stronger, more resilient, and more committed to each other than ever before. Their journey isn't over, but they're ready to face whatever comes next, together. And as they hold each other close, they know that they've found something worth fighting for. Something real, something lasting, something that can withstand even the toughest of storms. And remember, if you found this story as intense and moving as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the complexities of relationships and the strength it takes to rebuild trust. Let us know in the comments if you've ever faced a similar situation and what you learned from it. As Michael and Emma sit together, their hands tightly gripped, the realization of what they've just overcome begins to settle in. The air between them feels different now, lighter somehow, though the weight of everything they've been through still lingers. There's a tension that isn't entirely gone, but the immediate threat from Jake has been quelled. However, they both know that the hardest part is still ahead. The next few days are filled with a kind of quiet tension. Michael and Emma are trying to adjust to a new reality, one where they're no longer haunted by the constant threat of exposure, but where the aftermath of everything they've been through still needs to be dealt with. The truth has been spoken, decisions have been made, but healing isn't something that happens overnight. They know they have a long way to go before they can truly begin to rebuild their relationship. Emma, feeling the weight of her guilt more than ever, begins to put herself through an emotional gauntlet. She apologizes repeatedly to Michael, each time expressing how sorry she is for everything, how much she regrets her decisions. Michael, still working through his own feelings of betrayal and anger, does his best to reassure her that they are on the right path, but he can't help but feel the residue of the hurt from the past. Late one night, as they sit together in the living room, a conversation they've been avoiding finally takes place. Michael looks at Emma, the exhaustion from everything weighing on him, and asks the question that's been haunting him for days. How do we move on from here? Can we really move on? It's a loaded question, and the room feels heavy as Emma takes a long pause before responding. She's tried to hold it together, to keep a brave face, but now she's beginning to break. She leans forward, her face in her hands as the tears start to fall. I don't know, Michael. I don't know how to fix this. I've ruined everything. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. But Michael knows that this is part of the process, the rawness, the honesty. He reaches out and gently touches her shoulder, his voice soft but firm. We can't go back to where we were. We can't erase the past. But we can choose what happens next. And I want to choose us if you still do. Emma looks up at him, her eyes red from crying. There's a mix of pain and hope in her expression, a fragile thread that ties her to the future they've yet to build. For a moment, they simply stare at each other, each of them lost in the realization of how much they've endured. But then something changes. Michael, feeling an intense wave of emotion, stands up and walks over to the window. He gazes out into the night, his mind racing as everything floods back to him. The betrayal, the uncertainty, the long road ahead. He turns back to Emma, and for the first time in a long while, he speaks from a place of clarity. I don't have all the answers, he admits, and I don't expect things to be perfect, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to rebuild if you are. Emma stands slowly, her breath shaky as she wipes her eyes. She walks over to him and stands beside him at the window, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I deserve a second chance, but I love you, Michael. I've always loved you, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make things right. The weight of her words hangs in the air, a turning point in their relationship. The raw vulnerability, the admission of love despite everything, makes the tension between them shift. It's not a perfect solution, and they know they have a long road ahead, but it's a start. As the days pass, they work hard to repair the emotional damage that's been done. They go to therapy, they talk openly about their fears and desires, and they try to reestablish trust through the little things. A quiet dinner, holding hands as they walk down the street, a shared smile after a difficult conversation. But as they begin to build the framework of a new beginning, a sudden revelation jolts them both from their healing process. One afternoon, Michael is at work when he receives a phone call from an unknown number. His gut tells him it's trouble, and when he answers, his heart sinks. It's a private investigator, someone Emma had hired months ago without telling him. The investigator reveals something that makes Michael's blood run cold. There's evidence of more than just Jake. There are other encounters, other messages, other pieces of the puzzle that Michael had never known about. The investigator offers Michael all the details, but the price is steep, both financially and emotionally. He's left standing in his office, holding the phone in his shaking hands, unsure of what to do next. This new information feels like a fresh betrayal, one that cuts even deeper than Jake's actions. It wasn't just a one-time lapse in judgment. Something more, something far more complicated. He knows he has to confront Emma. He knows he can't let this fester, not after everything they've been through. But part of him is terrified. Can he handle the truth? Can he trust Emma again after everything he's learned? When he arrives home, Emma is sitting in the living room, waiting for him. Her face is tense, as if she knows something is wrong. The silence between them is suffocating as Michael walks in and sits down beside her. Emma, he starts, his voice tight. I found out about the investigator. Her eyes widen with shock, but there's no guilt in her expression, just fear. Michael, please, she begins, but he cuts her off. I found out about the other messages, the other encounters. Emma's face turns pale, and for the first time, Michael sees the full extent of her guilt, the way her whole body trembles with the weight of her actions. She's caught, and this time there's no denying it. Why didn't you tell me, Emma? He asks, his voice breaking slightly. How could you keep this from me? After everything we've been through. Tears begin to fall from Emma's eyes, and she doesn't try to hide them. I was scared, she whispers. I was so scared of losing you. I thought if I kept it from you, if I didn't make you face everything all at once, maybe we could still find a way to fix things. But I was wrong. For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Michael's heart aches as he watches Emma break down in front of him. He's hurt, but there's something else too. An understanding. An understanding that maybe, just maybe, they've both been broken by their pasts, and maybe, just maybe, they can find a way to put the pieces back together. But the damage is done. The question now is whether they'll have the strength to keep fighting for each other, or whether the weight of their mistakes will be too much to bear. As Michael listens to Emma's tearful confession, the tension between them becomes almost unbearable. The truth, once again, feels like a heavy burden, a weight that both of them have been carrying for far too long. Michael can barely process everything he's just heard, his mind reeling as he tries to make sense of it all. How many secrets has Emma been hiding? How much of their marriage has been built on lies? Why? Michael finally whispers, his voice barely audible. Why didn't you just tell me? Emma's face crumples, her hands shaking as she tries to find the words. I didn't want to lose you, Michael. I was terrified. Terrified that if I told you everything, you'd never look at me the same way again. That we'd be over. Michael takes a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. He's hurt, yes, but there's something else too. Something deeper. He's afraid. Afraid of what this means for their future, for everything they've fought for. He stands up and walks away from her, needing space to process. He starts pacing the room, his mind racing. He remembers the hope he had when they first confronted Jake, how they were starting to rebuild, to believe that they could overcome the past. But now, with this new revelation, it feels like they're back at square one. How can he trust her again when she's kept so much from him? How can they ever move forward if the foundation of their relationship is built on deceit? Emma watches him from across the room, her face filled with regret. Michael, please. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. I made so many mistakes. But I love you. I'm so sorry. Michael stops pacing and turns to face her, his voice shaking as he responds. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Emma. I don't know if I can keep going, knowing everything you've hidden from me. The silence between them is deafening. Both of them know that this moment is pivotal, that whatever happens next will decide the fate of their relationship. The stakes are higher than ever. Emma's voice breaks as she steps closer to him. I understand if you want to leave, but I swear to you, Michael, I will do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to making this right. I love you, and I will fight for us. For you. Michael looks at her, his heart torn. Part of him wants to walk away, to leave the pain and the betrayal behind. But another part of him, a part that he's not ready to give up on yet, wants to believe her. He wants to believe that they can start over, that the mistakes of the past don't have to define their future. The room is thick with the weight of their decision, each of them waiting for the other to make the first move. Michael finally speaks, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. I don't know, Emma. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. I don't know if I can forgive you for what you've done. Emma nods, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just need you to know how deeply sorry I am. I never wanted to hurt you. I was selfish. I let my fears get in the way, and I made choices that I'll regret for the rest of my life.